I've listened to 106 days and 6 hours of podcast, all of which in secondary time. If I spent an 8-hour day listening to podcast full time, then 106 days would equate to 106 multiplied by 24, equaling 2,544 hours. Then we divide the hours by 8, which gives us 318 workdays. Or with 40 hours per week, we have 318 workdays multiplied by 7 divided by 5, because 5 work days. Then we have 5 work days in a week. Then we have 445 work days. On the selection, all of the podcasts I consider educational. Therefore, I categorize this time as educational time. At least the podcast I listen to. Therefore, boasting about it makes at least partial sense. But the time is not actually spent, because on time spent. I distinguish between primary and secondary time use. Primary time is the time that is spent doing something that has to be done. Secondary time, the one that occurs if the primary activity is constrained in a way where an increase in psychological effort does not result in reduced activity time. Example, run for 1 hour. Years ago, I decided to quit spending primary time on reading. Before that, I decided to quit reading fiction for entertainment, but to instead utilize secondary time in order to listen to podcasts and audiobooks, now only educational. The 106 days, therefore, are time I did not spend listening, but cycling, washing dishes, hanging up laundry, doing garden work, and listening, replacing space for thinking, potential negative effect with listening. My rule for when not to utilize secondary time: if there is a noticeable drop in effectiveness on the primary activity, more than maybe 5 to 10%. Example, I tried listening to podcasts and audiobooks in the gym, yet this led to decreased performance. Biking, on the other hand, seems fine. Additionally, helpful is the ability to stop the playback whenever I need to think about my primary activity or about what has just been heard. For this reason, I for years wore headsets with pause buttons accessible on the outside, also pressable with gloves, ideally. Like these, the Philips SHB8000BK00, even though 2 pairs of these broke each after about a few months. For this reason, I tried multiple cheap ones until I got this one, which still exists after about 5 years of usage, but the volume rocker is dysfunctional. This is another Philips. It's called the SHB3060, and it doesn't sell any longer. Discussing the foldable Philips SHB360 Pro. It's foldable. Pause button on the outside, crucial for any physical work or pausing with dishwashing, wet hands, or cycling with gloves in winter. Contra, not foldable are adjustable. Non-foldable, this means they are adjustable and movable with one hand. A foldable one, like this one, on the other hand, if you try to adjust it with one hand, then you just end up rotating one of the rotational mechanisms in there. And you cannot just adjust the whole headset with one hand or the whole headphones. On the data, I included track data. I used the app Podcast Addict. Historically, no automatic backup. Loss of 25 to maybe 75% of global listening time is assumed due to switching phones or them failing. Beginning to listen in about 2011 or 2012. That's more than a decade as of reading. Actual podcast listening time might be in between 106 to maybe 250 or maybe even 500 days. Also, these days I found myself watching podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, but not tracked. I did keep YouTube playback history for quite some time, but this gives the algorithm data to feed on, and I try to get rid of these. On speed listening, usually I speed listen about 1.5 to 3.0 in terms of the speed. This means the displayed global listening time is not actual time I spent listening, but rather the static recording time or time that would have been required for listening in speed 1.0. Similar to I just am speaking at 1.0, but you can then speed that audio track up. I also read about 50 to 75% of my books this way, having now a book count of 466 as of reading, with an average audio book length of 10 hours. That's 4 4,560 hours, or an additional 190 days. But digital audiobooks were rare in the 2010s.